Welcome back to Sunday Vibes, one and all. We're back in the pub. Christopher Hamill, Dougie Critchley with me today. How are we, gents?
The sun is out. I'm feeling positive. Just realised there's still music on from the bar upstairs. Might get done for licensing issues.
Doubtful.
But, we'll crack on. Yeah, I'm feeling good. How about you, boys?
Yeah, all good. All good with me. Went out for dinner last night to celebrate my birthday, which is coming up next weekend. With Grace, which is
Get him
nice.
on famous birthdays.
Gone early there.
I'm
early.
away next weekend, so she wanted to celebrate this weekend. But yeah, I got my Benfica shirt on, celebrating their victory over Ajax this week. But yeah, all good. How are you, Jay?
Yeah, good. Sun's out, like you said. First time, maybe 3 t-shirts in 2022.
Didn't bring a coat.
I know, neither did I.
Did you get that feeling on the way in?
I did.
London,
That little
London in the
serotonin
summer
kick.
is different gear.
That little serotonin kick. All right, let's crack on with the show then. As you've probably seen by the title of this video, we are going to be discussing the England squad. This was a question sent in by I'm Ganesha, who says, discuss the changes to the England squad in preparation for the World Cup. Now, Gareth Southgate, of course, named his squad this week.
Yep.
Some quite youthful vibes in it, a few interesting shouts and a few stinky shouts, in my opinion, that I'm sure we're going to be discussing at length today. First thoughts when you saw it?
First thoughts, I was actually editing Snapchat, so I thought I'll come back to that later. I never did. Here we are. A little bit spontaneous from me on this show. But I think he's got most of it right, but there's a couple of high-profile clangers. Agreed.
Yeah, I mean, Dukes. Should we just jump in with
Sure.
our most notable stinker that we believe is a whiff?
That's what everyone wants. That's what everyone's tuning in for, the
what they want.
negativity.
The most notable one, I think, is probably Harry Maguire. Not because he hasn't been great for England in the past, not because he wasn't, he was in the team of the tournament at the Euros. He's never really let England down. He was excellent at the 2018 World Cup as well. But he is not playing anywhere near his correct level right now. Not anywhere close to it. And I don't think he's suddenly turned into a terrible player, but he is in terrible form. And I think for these two friendly games that don't really matter too much, this is an opportunity to see how Ben White does alongside Stones, or bring up Fikayo Tomori into the squad for the third time, I believe. But for the first time, potentially getting regular minutes in this England squad, which he fully deserves.
I think he's got 36 minutes.
Yeah,
It's nuts. And he's been so good for Milan for so long, despite having some serious injuries in that time. His centre-back partners have chopped and changed as well. Simon Kjær's got injured, Romagnoli's got injured, but they're still doing well in Serie A. They're still top of the table as we film this. And he's been excellent alongside Kalulu in recent weeks as well, sort of marshalling him. So Maguire, you take him out for any number of players, to be honest, right now. I wouldn't really mind who went in there. I just don't think I think it was the right time to drop him, take him out of the limelight, let him recover his form, in the same way you have done with Marcus Rashford, which I thought was pretty kind of you, Gareth. But Maguire should have been given the same treatment, in my opinion.
Totally agree. I think Maguire, like you said, is one of Southgate's sort of go-to men, clearly in that leadership squad that Gareth Southgate ranks extremely highly, which a number of these players must be, given that they've somehow got into the side. But terribly out of form at the moment, Harry Maguire. And I think mentally he could have done with some time out of the spotlight. We've seen this said about him in the past, though. I remember post the Greece incident, people were like, drop him, rest him, need some time out of the spotlight. When in reality, kind of refound a bit of form by just continuously playing, never missing a game, never missing a minute, and eventually refound form. I think this is a slightly different situation, though. I think this is, when it comes to footballing matters, is a problem at the moment for Harry Maguire. His continual downwards trajectory in this Manchester United side is starting to create a lot of problems for the club, in that he's almost undroppable because of the captaincy. United fans want to see Varane and Lindelof paired together.
Do you want to see a bit more of this against the Ivory Coast?
Against Atletico Madrid, when he was substituted in like 75th, 80th minute, I was at the ground. There was pretty resounding cheers for the substitution, boos for him coming off.
Atmosphere toxic or quite realistic?
The atmosphere in the last 5 minutes was extremely toxic. I don't think it was helped because of the refereeing performance either. The ball was in play for about 3 minutes in the second half. But overall, I think Harry Maguire just needs to be pulled out a little bit. In the same way, like you said, Marcus Rashford's been. If Gareth Southgate yesterday is talking about how Marcus Rashford's not been at the level, not been quite good enough, needs a break, I don't see how we can say that about Rashford, but then not apply the exact same sort of line of thinking to Harry Maguire, who has been in just as bad a form.
I agree. I suppose the one thing is Maguire has always been so solid for England, whereas Rashford doesn't really have that bedding of experience in top level performances because he was a bit part player at the Euros when he wasn't fully fit.
Yeah.
I can remember
He's still
great.
got 40 odd caps.
Yeah,
though,
I
hasn't he?
know, but can you remember? I mean, I can probably name great Rashford performances for England on one hand, whereas Maguire, it feels like about half the games he plays for England, he's generally excellent. Rashford probably doesn't have that bedding of like top level performances behind him. So I agree with you. I mean, I made the same point pretty much, but I can see why if Southgate's going for loyalty and performances under him have mattered so much, then Rashford makes more sense than Maguire.
I think this is an interesting moment, though, to discuss this sort of loyalty thing that Gareth has been very clear about, because he has picked players in this squad. Feels like for me for slightly different reasons, but overall, why else have they been picked if not for loyalty in this leadership group? It feels a little bit bizarre.
I'm struggling to find a consistent thread throughout the whole squad in terms of his rationale as to who he's picked, because he also said he hasn't picked Kyle Walker because he knows everything about Kyle Walker as a player. So he's trying Trent, he's trying Reece. Of course, he had his reservations about Trent ahead of the Euros, didn't he? Reece James has been injured for the majority of this season. But then surely he knows everything about Tyrone Mings, about Connor Cody, about Jordan Henderson. I know these are only friendlies, but like you, I'd like to have seen Tomori been rewarded for his form at AC Milan. I think that sends out the right message in the same way that Gehi has. And maybe Tyrone Mings should have been dropped. That was the thing I noticed at first. So I was like, well, Aston Villa, their defence, bang average this season, by the way. And we've got the sort of metrics to prove so. I'll go through them in a second. But he is part of that leadership group. He's been heralded for his qualities off the pitch, yes. But I look at some of the other defenders in that setup, in Ben White and John Stones, and I think elite passers. This is a great direction. They give England a level of control that has probably only been found in like Spain, Italy, or whatever in tournaments gone by. And then I look at Tyrone Mings and his distribution is very middling. He's very simple for Aston Villa. He sort of shuttles it out to Digne all the time. And I think this isn't a player that drives England forward. And I don't want to batter him too much because it's been a great story, hasn't it? A great narrative from Darlington to England. He's got his caps. He played well in the opening games of the Euros. But if I was Tomori, like you boys, I'd be annoyed about my exclusion and his inclusion.
Yeah, I think as well with Tyrone Mings, I think he gets quite a lot of sort of room and space because in the England squad, because he's left-footed. And, England do lack left-footed centre-halves, especially when we want to play that back three, which has worked so well for Gareth Southgate. If Mings has to come in, he can play as a left-sided centre-back in that back three. I would have preferred to see Max Kilman in there than Tyrone Mings. If we're looking for a left-footed centre-half, I think Max Kilman
he's right-footed but plays on the left.
No, he's left-footed, plays on the right.
Yeah.
Sorry,
He's left-footed and plays on the right, which is kind of the harder role almost because you're playing the reverse to try and open yourselves out to the fullbacks. I think Max Kilman has been the outstanding English left-footed centre-back in the division this season. Should be playing over Tyrone Mings. I think he's got a more exciting future than Tyrone Mings. He's only 24. He's obviously qualified for England because of this England futsal professional deal that went on in the past because he was going to go and play for Ukraine, wasn't he? And I think that situation in Ukraine has weighed on him recently a little bit. I think his form has slightly dipped in this last few weeks. And he's got family over in Kiev, hasn't he? So I would personally have preferred to see Tomori come in for Maguire, and I would have preferred to see Max Kilman over Tyrone Mings in terms of left-footed centre-backs. I know that he plays on the right of a back three for Wolves, but I think as a left-footer, easier to play on that left-hand side.
But like historically, Gareth Southgate has had no problem playing Kieran Trippier, a right-footed player, at left back. Yeah. We've seen a whole back four comprised of right-footers, which isn't preferential, but it's not like he's looking at Tyrone Mings and going, I have to include him because I need a left footer for my balance in terms of distributing from the back in that back line. Like if he was, I'd be like, well, that's not something you valued in the past. But yeah, I think mine would probably be Tomori for Mings. I don't think Kilman has necessarily done enough to be included as of yet. What about you?
I think he's excellent, Kilman, to be honest. I think he's played pretty much every game so far, and that's been central to Bruno Lage's his team's great season so far. I think that Cody, Saiss, Sarr backline, they've been excellent. Up until a couple of weeks ago, I think they had the third best defence in Europe. I think now it's about 8th. I think Kilman's been a massive part of that. He's not amazing in the air, but I think his distribution sort of makes up for that. And I think he'd I think we went on a podcast a couple of weeks ago, me, Pat, and Henry, and we were talking about it, and I put forward Kilman for the back line. Pat was actually suggesting Adam Webster at that time as a potential another player to consider at the back. But I think Gareth Southgate's also made a little bit of a risk here. I know they're only friendly games, but only picking one left back, especially one in Luke Shaw, who's been so injury prone this season, and also like Maguire, probably hasn't been as bad this year, but has been nowhere near his best, and it's really affected that whole left-hand side of Man United's attack, which over the last couple of years has been their sort of saving grace, really, that relationship with Marcus Rashford. Both have been really off it. So I'd potentially pick another left-back in here, and I think there's...
There we go.
I think there's...
Dougie's been teeing up a rogue shout all morning.
It's a little bit of a rogue shout. It's only for these friendlies, but I think he deserves a call-up on the form of last few years. I'd probably pick Aaron Cresswell. I really do think he's very good. And he's 31. He's not one for the future. But just for this squad, while Ben Chilwell gets back, clearly Ben Chilwell and Luke Shaw will be England's left-backs at the World Cup unless there's a massive injury crisis. Tyreek Mitchell probably deserves a shout-out, maybe one for the future. But I think Aaron Cresswell's been excellent, can play in a 3 or a 4 as well. Great distributor, great over free kicks as well. And I think he's a very solid defender. So I think he's got 3 England caps in the past, but not for a while.
On merit, sure. But how does that help Gareth prepare for the World Cup?
Well, if Luke Shaw is injured in this squad, which could well happen, he's pretty stuffed.
I would prefer to see Tyreek Mitchell.
I was going to say Tyreek Mitchell, particularly if you're having on the other flank someone like Trent or Reece, who are going to be so attack-minded. Obviously,
Aaron Cresswell doesn't bomb on that much, though, in the same way that Trent does.
Yeah, I mean, Tyreek Mitchell, I think, has missed 8 Premier League minutes of football for Crystal Palace this season. His defensive stats are looking like Aaron Wan-Bissaka pre-moving to Manchester United when he was one of the best defensive fullbacks in the league. And the man has just got ice running through his veins. He's just composed. And I think he brings a really nice balance to that Crystal Palace side that is quite forward-thinking. And if Gehi's getting a nod, I'm Tyreek Mitchell and I'm like, well, we've sort of... we're bringing the same amount of solidity to the side. So I would probably bring him in over Cresswell just because Mitchell probably has a future in the England setup as opposed to, Cresswell whose time might have passed.
I don't mind that Cresswell shout.
It's definitely,
I can see that happening.
Papering over the cracks or
It's only a temporary thing.
As a temporary fix.
Temporary measure,
I could definitely see that happening. But that is a little bit of a problem developing that left-back role for England with Luke Shaw so out of form. We don't know how Chilwell is going to return from that ACL injury. It's easy to say he'll just come back, hit the ground running, the same player he was. But we've seen in the past it massively affect people's entire careers.
And he's also out till the end of the season. It's not like he's coming back now. So it's hard for us to talk about him as a consideration.
So it could be a little vacant space there for somebody to explode over the back half of this season, the start of next season, and potentially be a bit of a shock inclusion for that World Cup squad. It wouldn't put it past me. I think Trent has actually pulled out of the England squad today.
Has, yeah.
So we just think Walker is just a natural.
Probably makes sense. Yeah.
Especially given that Reece James is also had that injury problem.
We were having a little chat before, weren't we, about Kyle Walker's inclusion, and I think it makes an awful lot more sense to sort of not to take him. He's going to be part of the squad. He's an outstanding fullback, isn't he? But I can see him getting minutes if England persist with the back three, although that's not been the case in recent games where they've come up against better opposition. They've played a back four, haven't they? Kyle Walker, okay going forward, not that impactful. And I think when you look at England's performances in the Euros, particularly in the group stages, because we got to the final, everyone forgets how sort of stifled our attack was. I think we were averaging between 7 and 8 shots per night, which was in the bottom 3 of the competition for the group stages. It didn't get much better in the knockout phases. And also, we weren't a possession-heavy side when we had the players to enact that. And I just think Gareth might have had one eye on that and thought I was a little bit too conservative, and that's why Reece James and Trent are getting the nod. And bringing Kyle Walker back into the side maybe takes a little bit of attacking sting out of a system he's maybe moving towards. I'm not sure. I think wonderful recovery pace, what an asset to have. But if we're going to unleash the talent we have, maybe he does sit it out.
Yeah, I think what Walker has is I would pick him every day in a big game, like a semi-final against Brazil or a quarter-final against Germany. I'd have Walker over pretty much any other fullback in the squad, just because I've seen him so reliably do it for Manchester City on big occasions.
But then you wouldn't have
endlessly.
Trent there for the set pieces, for
Ball
the
progression,
build-up,
yeah.
for the ball progression.
I don't think I would at the World
But that's
Cup.
quite a conservative approach, isn't
Yeah.
it? Like, I need someone who's gas. I need someone who's
I
going to
agree.
cover the back line.
But I
if
just
you
don't-
trust your centre-halves,
I think we're not a team that is going to be ball-dominant retention system. I don't think we've got the midfielders to do it.
what? Bellingham,
And Rice,
Phillips,
I just don't think that they will be able to maintain possession and control of a game in the same way that some of our opposition midfielders that we're going to potentially come up against. If we come up against an Italy again, I don't see us having a Jorginho type player to just come in and control the entire game. I think
who's been
Rice
smashed left, right, and centre by English football fans.
I think
for the
Rice
past
is a
3 years.
brilliant ball carrier and super progressive, but I think to ask Bellingham at 18 to come in, start every minute of a World Cup campaign and be the guy who just controls the game, I think is a big ask. It's a big ask.
I don't know, Liverpool are a ball dominant side without necessarily having like a deep lying playmaker. I know they've got Thiago
They've got
Alcantara,
Thiago, yeah.
but he's in and out of the side, I guess. I mean,
Fabinho's very good at retaining
yeah,
the
they've
ball as
been ball dominant with 3 more combative, industrious midfielders because all they do is ferry it to the wide guys, right? And that's not all they do. They do an awful lot of work, but. Yeah, I would like to see him be a little bit more progressive and a little bit more attacking in his outlook. And I think not including Walker might have been a little indication of that.
Yeah.
But now he's kind of maybe has to revert to the mean.
Chris, about a minute ago, said quite a crucial point was like, do you trust your centre-backs? And at the moment, it's by far the weakest part of the squad, in my opinion, our centre-backs, particularly with the form they're in as well. Like this would be a very different story if Maguire was, at his best for Man United. I feel much more confident. But with the emergence of Rice, with the emergence of Bellingham, with Henderson still just about holding on to his best form, just about, I'm much more worried about the centre-back situation than midfield.
But would you be less concerned? Like,
I'm not concerned about
if we're
midfield,
talking,
but I just don't think it suits them playing that way.
Yeah, fair. If we're talking trust, I mean, Tomori for AC Milan this season, first for tackles, first for interceptions, first for blocks, first for clearances.
It's unreal.
First for completed passes, like second for balls received. Like he's entrusted with possession by everyone in that team.
He's had 3 different partners.
Third for carries, exactly. Kalulu, Simon Kier, Romagnoli. Like, he's been the mainstay in a side that is at the summit of Serie A. We're talking trust. Like, Milan trust this guy. Why does Gareth Southgate not trust him?
I mean, that definitely feels like a selection penalised for not playing in the Premier League. If Tomori was playing in a top 6 side that was putting out that output with 3 different partners, challenging for a league title in the Premier League, there's no doubt he would be in this squad. Absolutely no doubt. Ben White has been sensational for Arsenal this season. Really composed on the ball. I think he's looked more and more aggressive as the season's gone on, and feels like a shoo-in now for this England side. Ben White, given that I think he went to the Euros, didn't he? Then he got dropped for a few squads, and now he's back in. Now it feels like a shoe-in. If he hadn't been in this squad, it'd been really bizarre. So for Tomori, who's challenging for league titles, to not be in there, I think is just as bizarre.
Yeah, and I think he dovetails. I mean, on Team Talk, spoiler alert, you put Stones and White in there, and I think like that is elite in terms of playing out from the back, in terms of ball progression. That's a back back two that's aesthetically pleasing on the eye. But I think Tomori dovetails nicely with either one of those. Let him be the pure defender and let the other guy step out.
And he's had Champions League experience this season. I think he's been remarkably solid in pretty much every Serie A game. I think the only,
had a few
the only
striker
that I think has given him a really hard time is Victor Osimhen, but he gives everyone a hard time in Serie A. I think he is the outstanding centre forward in that league.
He has had a few high-profile errors. When I put out the tweet yesterday about Tomori, I had a few AC Milan fans saying to me they're not.
There was a couple in the
surprised
Champions League,
that he hasn't been included because of the high-profile errors he's made. But I replied to them saying, you're acting as if the other centre-backs that have been included have been errorless. Like, I've seen Harry Maguire make endless errors this season. Tyrone Mings, consistent error maker in the top 5.
Hold on, a guy who's learning the language and has had 3 centre-half partners has made errors in his first full campaign.
He's nearly fluent now.
That's going to happen.
Yeah, it was really impressive. It was really impressive.
And he's 24, 23, 24.
And this foreign player argument, I say foreign players playing abroad, has probably given more credence by the fact that Jadon Sancho probably hasn't been fully integrated as an England regular yet, whereas his performances for Dortmund over the last few years, prior to joining Man United, would suggest that he should have been, being eased into the first team like Saka, and like Foden, etc.
The one argument I think Gareth might have for Sancho, I think.
Should we move on to Sancho?
Maybe let's talk
I
about
think he
Sancho.
should have been included
I
as
think
well.
he should have been included as well.
Yeah.
But I think he has been poor for England when he's played. I haven't been impressed by Jadon Sancho in an England shirt, and he has played 23 games for England now.
Difficult though. I'd love to see the stats. How many of them have been longer than 25 minutes though? And it's always difficult to impact a game, particularly when you're joining a new side, new system, new players. He hasn't played with a lot of these players at club level up until this season as well. Like, I do pity him. And I'd love to see him get regular minutes over, I think we'll probably talk about him, but Smith Rowe, I don't think has been a regular for Arsenal in their current good patch. I think, Odegaard's gone past him, Martinelli's gone past him on that left-hand flank as well. And Arsenal are playing their best football in an attacking sense, I think, so it's Arsene Wenger. And Smith Rowe is coming off the bench, and he's done it effectively this year. I think he's scored some wonderful goals. His goals and assist numbers is really healthy. But sometimes I get the impression that Southgate looks at, I don't know who scored or whatever site he uses, just looks at pure numbers for a bit rather than picky on form. Because if you're picky on form, Sancho, I think, has been United's best player, full stop, in the last month, even over De Gea, whose distribution, I think, lets him down at times. So Sancho would 100% be in there over Smith Rowe if you're picking on form.
I would also have Sancho with Smith Rowe. Like, I think Smith Rowe has put up 3 starts in 2022. I think Arsenal have found a real rhythm without Smith Rowe in the side, with Odegaard in the 10, Martinelli on the left, and Saka on the
Arsenal
right.
fans will be like, Smith Rowe should be in the England squad, but not in our starting 11. That's the vibe I'm getting at the moment.
Like, I obviously think he's extremely impactful, isn't he? Coming off the bench, clearly Arteta has found real rhythm with him being able to impact games off the bench when teams are tiring. He's able to exploit space. He's a really good dribbler. He's very neat in his passing, isn't he? But you can't ignore the fact that he is, at the moment, not good enough to start for Arsenal. Jadon Sancho had a really poor first 5 months of the season when he was trying to adapt to a new league that he hadn't played in before, in a pretty crap Manchester United side, playing in multiple positions under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, who was struggling at the time. Ralph Rangnick's come in, giving him consistent game time in a spot that he enjoys, and you've seen him flourish. I think it's also a bit of a weird selection that I personally believe that Emile Smith Rowe mirrors a Foden and a Grealish a little bit more in how he wants to operate, coming in off that left-hand side, being slightly more central in his position. I think Sancho is a more out-and-out winger. I actually think Sancho gets the byline an awful lot for Manchester United, and that is maybe something England miss on that left-hand side without a Rashford, without a Sancho. Like, Sterling wants to come in an awful lot. I know that Sancho does too, but his ability to go on the outside, get to the byline and come back, I think he's a little bit underrated, Sancho. So we've got quite a lot of central options almost that want to play in the line between 10 and left wing.
I think Jadon Sancho could quite equally, be a world-class winger and a world-class playmaker at the same time. I think his ceiling is so much higher than Smith Rowe's, and I think Smith Rowe is a solid player. But I think we'll be looking at this conversation in a couple of years and thinking, really, it was between like these two guys, and we went for Smith Rowe. Jadon Sancho has to be in the team for me. Particularly now he's picked up a little bit of form. Like you said, I think he's in that England squad. Only Harry Kane has more goal involvements in the Premier League in 2022. Smith Rowe hasn't finished a game for Arsenal since November. Like, his fitness is also an issue. I just think, Jadon Sancho.
He's still in like the top 5% for dribbles, top 10% for progressive carries, top 5% for passes into the box of like European wingers. Like, it's not as if he's had this collapse of a season. The issue for Sancho has been the bedding in period, the teammates around him, and not being able to find a consistent role. When he's found consistent game time, he's looked much, much better. And I think next season, he'll be an exciting player for Manchester United. And if he doesn't go to the World Cup, I'd be surprised.
Yeah. Who's your front three?
Right now.
Strongest front three
for England, I still think is Sterling, Kane, and Saka. I just think that is
Sterling on the left.
Sterling on the left, Kane through the middle, Saka on the right. I think Saka is our outstanding right winger by some distance at this stage.
But Sterling's also his form's also been iffy in 2022, hasn't it? Like 3 Premier League goals since the start of the year. They all came against Norwich. I think Phil Foden has 2 Premier League goals or goal contributions since the start of 2022. So it's not like they're in dynamite form and their inclusion should be automatic. I know that Sterling curries a lot of favour with Southgate and he was brilliant at the last tournament. But still, that's a double whammy then for Sancho, isn't it? Outperforming Sterling to that extent and Sterling still being regarded as the key guy.
Our left wing situation, you're selecting Sancho not in the squad, you're selecting between Sterling,
Foden,
Grealish, and like Grealish has also not had huge output. Foden maybe is better in that sort of 10 space where Mason Mount wants to operate.
I suppose Sterling can also play on the right.
Yeah, I think I'm just thinking of how I do my midfield and attack, and I'd probably try and move into a 4-3-3. And my midfield would probably be Rice, Bellingham, and Mount.
Same.
And in that case, I wouldn't start Foden on the left wing, because I'd probably, if you were, wanted to change the game a bit, maybe bring Foden on for Mount and play him as a 10 or something. So I probably would start Sterling on the left, Saka on the right, and Kane through the middle, and maybe swap Grealish for Sterling after about 60 minutes as well. I think Saka deserves to start, to be honest, on that right-hand side, as you say. I think he's been absolutely sensational for Arsenal. I was watching that Watford game in particular. I know it's only Watford, but he is playing at a level that I haven't seen from an Arsenal winger for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And I didn't think he was great against Liverpool, to be fair. But prior to that, he's been in excellent form. So I think if we're going on form, I think Saka has to start.
For me, I think the dynamic should be Sancho and Sterling fighting it out for a place on that left at the moment. Like Sterling is ahead based on what he has done in the past 18 months for England. But yeah, I think Sancho, because of his form in 2022, should be pushing him. Rashford's exclusion, totally justified.
Yeah.
Because you've gone through 3 or 4 players who would be preferred on the left-hand side. But that's what I would have opted for.
Yeah, a couple other names that I think worth potentially mentioning. I would have included Jacob Ramsey in my squad as a left field shout. I think there's one too many centre-backs in the team. I don't think you need 6 centre-backs in this squad going.
Yeah, but they're all part of his senior leadership team, mate. They're all centre-halves.
As I said earlier, I would have had Kilman in for Mings. I would have had Tomori for Maguire, and I would have Jacob Ramsey in for Conor Cody. I think Conor Cody's inclusion is that leadership role. Absolutely fine. That's obviously what Gareth Southgate's going to go for. But just purely for the future, I think Jacob Ramsey's been so impressive in 2022. He's been as impressive in 2022 as Conor Gallagher, in my opinion. I think Conor Gallagher got off to an absolute flyer at Palace and was sensational through the first half of the season. But I think since the turn of the year, I've been maybe a little bit more impressed by Jacob Ramsey, especially since Steven Gerrard has taken over. I think it's 6 goals this season. 5 of them have come under
unreal.
Steven Gerrard, and that's certainly where he's at his best, arriving late in the box, isn't it? So I wonder whether he would be slightly more in that Mason Mount advanced position.
I find them a weird fit for this England squad, both Conor Gallagher and Jacob Ramsey, because their strengths are going forward, almost operating in the 10 space, but working like an 8, off the ball.
Yeah.
So, and England don't really need that because Kane is going to be dropping off. You've got wingers that are going to get beyond him. I imagine we're going to play with a certain degree of width because that's where our strengths are. Then we've got that industry at the heart of midfield. So I feel like, Jacob Ramsey, Conor Gallagher, unfortunately, he did play a 4-2-3-1 against Italy in the final. But we also have outstanding candidates at 10, don't we? I feel like they're just a weird fit. Like I said, I don't know. I don't think there's a better way to
he said
describe
yesterday actually that it was between Conor Gallagher and Jacob Ramsey, and he feels that Conor Gallagher is just a little bit ahead in his progression, which is fine.
But he also had that year last year at West Brom where he was really good as well. But I completely agree with Chris. I don't really think Conor Gallagher's that suited to what England are trying to go towards. There's better players that play in that forward thinking. If he was going to play in the midfield 3, there's better players to be that player pushing on. And Conor Gallagher's, I think, at his best, he's sort of like a terrier 10, if that makes sense. He will go close you down. He'll work his socks off. He runs so hard. He's like very intense presser. But his passing numbers are pretty average. His defensive output is okay, but it's not great. So I don't really see him in a deeper role. And I think there's better players, as Chris says, pushing forward.
Yeah. And he plays on the right-hand side in Palace's 4-3-3, doesn't he? Where we would probably deploy, I don't know, Bellingham, Rice as the deepest.
Maybe Ward-Prowse coming off the bench there or something.
Yeah. So there's always that kind of element with England's midfield where you're going to have to pick up some of the defensive work, I guess, for maybe a Trent. You want a player that's got the legs to cover on that right-hand side, don't you? And that might be a Phillips. It might be a Bellingham. What I will say about Southgate is he's tended to get the balance of starting 11s right. Maybe not squads, but that's harder for us to make a call on because of
a lot of people will remember at the Euros going, you can't keep playing Rice and Phillips when that gave us all of our balance throughout the team. People going, get Mount in alongside right, the balance.
But that's when you want Trent. If you're going to play that double pivot, that's when you want a Trent, isn't it? And you're we've got the solidity to make that happen.
A couple other shouts that I'm sure people will be asking for at home, and they were on Twitter. Dan Burn.
No.
Big Dan Burn.
Not for me personally.
I'm really loving the Dan Burn resurgence. He's playing for his hometown club in Newcastle. He's been excellent. But I don't think he's England level, and he's not the age where you'd be like, maybe he could be in 2 or 3 years' time. I think he was
33.
in and out of Brighton's side for the last few years. Good when he played, been excellent for Newcastle, deserves respect, but he's just not at the level of those young players coming through.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree with you more. And like, just to touch upon Brighton as well, Adam Webster, I think you said about him earlier. If he wasn't injured, I think he would be in with a great shout of getting in this one.
I didn't like it when Dan Burn was a comedy figure at Brighton, because I think it was like Dougie said, always a better player than people give him credit for. I mean, it is odd seeing a 6'7" bloke maraud down the left hand side to that extent, isn't it? But like, Brighton's form has bottomed out, and Newcastle's form has improved since he moved, and that's a bit of a false equivalence, but it's nice that he's getting the credit, that he's part of the conversation. He probably deserves that for the journey he's been on, but no. Like, I mean, I said no to Aaron Cresswell. If you say no to Aaron Cresswell, you say no to Dan Burn.
Ivan Toney.
Justice for Aaron.
Thoughts on Ivan Toney in the centre forward role? I saw quite a few people asking for that.
Nah.
Not for me. I think Ivan Toney's been fine this year. I don't think he's probably been as good as I expected. But a lot of goals in the last month or so. But Tammy Abraham's been excellent for Roma. Really good. I think he's got 21 goals in all competitions. He's been unbelievable, particularly in the Europa. Well, it's the Conference League. I know it's not the highest level. But yeah, carried Roma to... They've got an outside chance of finishing fourth. They've got Lazio this weekend. Tammy Abraham's been excellent. If DCL was fully fit and on form, maybe there'd be a conversation there. But Tony's your fourth, fifth in that list. I'd have someone like Ollie Watkins before, or even Danny Ings before Ivan Toney.
That's what I said. I'd say Watkins over Toney, and they're quite a similar profile of player as well, aren't they?
I think it's tight. I think that's tight. I think I'd have Toney over Watkins.
You're
based on this
abandoning
season.
your Exeter lads.
Yeah, I am. I think Watkins has had a bit of an underwhelming season, and I know that Toney is his first year in the Prem, but I think as soon as he's got one elite level creator alongside him, he's looked a totally different player.
I was going to say underwhelming season. Tony was on about 5 goals until the last 3-4 matches.
But I think that is largely down to the fact that Brentford had a really poor creative output, and he was having to drop so deep into the side, try these ridiculous flicks to Mbeumo, who's running in behind, running off him all the time. Soon as they've added one creative midfielder that wasn't just a workhorse, you've seen a totally different Ivan Toney. It's
been quite similar with Villa though, hasn't it? And Watkins, I guess, as soon as they've had a Coutinho, they've found a bit of consistency, they've found more balance. It is difficult weighing a team's deficiencies, like, are they the players' deficiencies or are they the team's deficiencies? And in Ollie Watkins' case, I think they're the team's rather than his. Like, it'd be nice just to have someone that can press like hell, that can play it all along that forward line. But like, Watkins can play on the wing as well. Maybe Toney can't. That's what edges it for me. But you fine margins,
Yeah, fine margins. Let's move on to some quick fire questions then, unless you've got any other names you want to shout out.
Who have we not? I mean, I think Trevor Chalobah probably deserves a shout out. People talking about like Gehi, people talking about Kilman.
He's been a little bit rash recently, Trevor Chalobah. I know he should have given away a penalty at the weekend, and I know it's just 2 mistakes, but he should have nearly gave away a penalty against Lille as well.
All right, recency bias, we're taking him out.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's a shocker that he's not included.
No, but I've not heard him be part of any conversation.
No, exactly.
Which is why
he's definitely on the right path.
Yeah, what he's done this season has been impressive in a very demanding defensive system. I know, playing in a back three, maybe not as demanding as some systems, but Elise has obviously gone to the under-23s in France. You seemed very keen on him.
I think that's a real shame for England. If he's picked France over England, I think that's a real shame, because like I said earlier, I think England have got a little bit of a hole in the right wing depth position. I think like Bukayo Saka, and then we're looking at playing Sterling on the wrong side, Grealish on the wrong side, Sancho on the wrong side, Rashford on the wrong. I think we lack natural right width, and I think Elise has just got better and better as the season's gone on. He's so technically gifted. I think there was a moment against Man City where it kind of popped into him. You were expecting him to hit it first time with his left, and he kind of did some weird drag back nutmeg Laporte, and I just thought, Jesus Christ,
he's got the drag back on lock.
So technically good, and naturally plays out on that right hand side. So I think that's a bit of a shame for England. If he's
seeing chat about him on Twitter to replace Salah in the future, and it's an early shout so far, but he is. He looks like he could be really good.
A headline grabber, I love
That's
it.
That's an early shout.
Yeah. Very early shout.
Klopp has been openly tapping up Martinelli for months.
Plays on the different side.
He retired at half of Wolves' side when I watched Palace versus Wolves down that right flank. Elise,
I think that's a shame for England if he's picked France.
He's like weirdly playmakery, techie for a winger, isn't he? He's class.
Plays with his head up as well.
Yeah, I think. Maybe he's only picked that France, like we were discussing off camera, to kind of force England's hand a bit and go, okay, I'm going to go with the French if you don't give me an opportunity here.
I mean, it's the same with Mitchell can declare for Jamaica as well, I read. And they're...
Shame.
Oh, wow, one of the lights has gone off, but we'll crack on. And we've seen in the past, like, obviously Antonio declared for Jamaica. He could have been a useful asset for England, although you've not been his biggest fan in recent weeks. Not been great in 2022, has he? But maybe it's best we move on from that into quick fire questions then.
Should we...
Yeah, just...
All right, first quickfire question then is from Danny Beresford. He says the title race is hotting up. Considering momentum, remaining fixtures, your own thoughts, City or Liverpool?
Yes, it is. We do have the light back on. We are back with light. It is very exciting, hugely exciting. I'm thrilled for it because a couple of months ago I looked like an idiot. Now I put on Twitter, I think it's done. I was saying De Bruyne wasn't playing his best. He's going to get more game time. I think that was in early January. They were 14 points clear, etc. I still think it'll be Man City, personally. I think Liverpool have more of a potential to concede sloppier goals than Man City. I think even when Man City drop points, it's generally, I think they even made this point on Monday night or whenever it was, Tuesday night, the Liverpool game, whichever night that was, that, Man City play at a certain level all the time. And yes, there'll be occasional games where they don't score. I think there's 4 so far this year where they've been remaining goalless. Liverpool only 1. But I just feel like Liverpool have more potential to make a defensive blunder. And I feel like if Salah wasn't playing for Liverpool right now, which is by the by, but Alisson would be their player of the year, by far. I think Alisson, he's been sensational this year, alongside Matip.
I think it would be Matip, yeah.
I think it'd be Matip or Alisson. And Alisson is coming out with a one-on-one save every single game. And I just think there's more potential for Liverpool to go badly wrong defensively, even though their attack is slightly better than Man City's at the moment. So I'm still backing Man City, but I hope it goes right down to the wire.
Yeah, I'm also going to back Manchester City. I totally agree. I think that Manchester City have better game control, and across the next 10 fixtures or 9 fixtures, however long it is left, that game control will be the key factor. I can see Liverpool, despite the fact they have got a better front 5 right now, or at least a better front 5 in terms of form goal scoring wise. I think they're outscoring Manchester City this season, aren't they? I think they've scored 4 or 5 more goals than them. But with the inclusion of Luis Diaz, they can blitz teams away. I just think, like you say, Alisson has dug them out a lot, and I think maybe once he won't be able to dig them out. Whereas City, it just feels like it's just wave of attack. And if, they haven't scored one, but they're never being troubled at the back. I haven't seen Edison make a save in about 8 weeks. I don't know what's going on.
We place a certain degree of trust in the underlying numbers, don't we? And even against Crystal Palace, everyone's like, "Oh, it's City's booby team." Like the XG was like 3-0 to City, and you just like they just had one of those games, and those games normally turn into points. At some point in the season. I know we're getting to the business end of the season, but Tottenham felt like it was just like perfect storm in the moment, didn't it? Like Harry Kane just decided he was going to be unplayable. Conte set up perfectly, but I just.
The only slight concern is we were talking about Foden and Sterling earlier. Like neither of them are on great goal scoring form at the moment. You're going to need someone to go on a little Gundogan patch last year and just see them over the line, because it is getting pretty nervy. They've got a lot of experience in this area, but none of their attackers, except for probably Riyad Mahrez, are putting up the consistent numbers sort of week in, week out every time they
play. That game is so huge, April 10th, isn't it? It's so big, man.
And they're always class. Yeah, aren't they? They're always epic.
Do you know that's the only thing though that I feel like this sort of half of a decade or like 4 or 5 years has now missed is like actual rivalry. Like I
was going to say, there's not enough needle in it.
They are sick teams. They are probably 2 of maybe the best teams in Premier League history. But it's just a bit. Hasn't had that sort of like, I'm going to fucking hammer through him. Klopp and Guardiola going out and such. Like they hate each other.
There's a lot of mutual respect.
They like each other too much, man. It's a bit boring.
And it's not either team's biggest game historically.
Coming on Roy Keane.
I just want. Do you know what I mean? It's just like in terms of rivalry, like I just feel like if they hated each other more, it'd be even better. It could be even better.
I enjoyed a couple of months ago, Trent Alexander-Arnold made some comment about, what was it about? Something to do with they haven't won the Champions League or something, and we've been competing every year or something like that. I was like, yes, Trent, come on, get it up.
When we had United Arsenal back in the day, or like United Chelsea, and they were hated each other on the touchline, it was like, yes.
But then this is an episode on England, and the harmony in the England camp has probably gone some way as to extinguishing that sort of those off the field antics.
It has.
So maybe we can't have it both ways.
Yeah. I'd like Sterling and Joe Gomez had that little head-to-head in the England camp. I think that was just after the England Man City Liverpool as well, a couple of years ago.
Joe Gomez had eat him.
As a player,
well, Joe Gomez needs to get in the squad before he can eat him. To be fair.
Next one: should Harry Maguire and Marcus Rashford be let go by Manchester United, and what teams would suit them? That's CB Clayman.
such a bad time to sell them because neither of them have great value right now. I don't think they're going to get rid of Maguire, and I don't know why you would get rid of Maguire because you're not going to recoup anything close to his fee. So Maguire is just going to be a Man United player now, I feel.
Rashford would just be such a poor sale, I think, in my opinion.
So where is he going?
Also, you've got to... Some bridges need to be built there just to secure like United's depth in the forward departments. Because like if Ronaldo goes, if Martial goes, if Cavani goes,
Lingard,
Mata, exactly. Like maybe it's not the best thing to do to fall out of Marcus Rashford right now.
I don't think it's even about falling out. It's just it would be a bizarre. Like I still think Rashford has an incredibly high ceiling.
Yeah, fallout's an oversell.
Was it not last season in the Champions League? He was the third highest scorer in the Champions League or something like that.
I think he got 20 goals in all competitions the year before that.
Like
as well.
I know that he's having a really bad season and like things have not gone his way, but they haven't gone away for most of United's squad have looked crap. So, like, let's not just write off a 22-year-old potential star because United are all over the gaff.
And Pochettino or Ten Hag or whoever comes in will want a squad with Marcus Rashford in, particularly given the forward options as Chris discussed. So.
Yeah, 100%. Swagato is back. He says, even after all the disrespect to La Liga, how did those sides manage to kick PSG, Man United and Juve out? Well, mainly because Juventus and United are horrendous teams.
Juve missed a lot of big chances at the start of that game. But yeah, Villarreal came on stronger. And you like Daniele Rugani, Danilo, these aren't top defenders. They're
Unai Emery out shit-housing Max Allegri.
And like United are just terrible. Like, that's a simple fact. Like Atletico Madrid had more. Wasn't even that impressed by Atletico. They just got more streetwise.
João Felix had a great tie, I thought.
Yeah, like I think as soon as Atletico come up against a decent side, like if they draw Man City in the next round, I have no doubt Man City will absolutely hammer them. Like Man United are just poor. They just are not good enough to get to a Champions League.
And PSG were way on top of that game for 1.5 games. Like, so far on top. And massive credit to Real Madrid for coming back into it. I thought they showed great spirit. Ancelotti made some great changes. Benzema finished really well. But I don't think even the most diehard Real Madrid fans would say that they outplayed PSG clearly over 2 legs. They just, PSG fell apart and they took full advantage of it.
Yeah, it's the PSG bottle. It happens every year. It just cannot be fair.
But credit to the La Liga sides as well, to be fair.
And I think Swaggerton probably sent this in when Villarreal knocked out Juventus and not when West Ham knocked out Sevilla as well, right?
Yeah.
Like in the Europa League.
Lost 15 quid because of that. Yeah. So George.
Like, fair play to the La Liga sides. Some of them, like Barcelona, look like they're improving, massively. At least. Like, I know that Galatasaray kind of nearly nicked something off them last night, but overall, seem like they're improving a little bit. Sevilla seem okay. I think that's probably the end of the Julian Lopetegui experiment to Manchester United that's been going on in some forms of football Twitter and that United have been identifying over the last few months.
I don't know what's gone on at Sevilla because they looked like the second best side in Spain, didn't they? Up until like Christmas,
maybe,
like late December.
They expected points now. They've like fallen away a little bit, haven't they?
But they kind of that happens a lot to Sevilla because of the lack of depth, I guess.
Yeah.
Well,
they did bring in Martial, to be fair, in January, didn't they? I don't know whether that's worked or not. I haven't really.
Hasn't really hit the ground running. No.
I think he scored 1 goal, has he?
Something like that. Yeah.
And they were sick last night, obviously. But I mean, respect to the Spanish sides for
someone bookmarked one of my tweets at the start of the season when I said I was talking about all the talent that left La Liga and they hadn't. I think only 3 clubs had signed a player for over £10 million when I sent this tweet. And anyway, I finished it off with La Liga is done. And someone bookmarked it and responded to me after Wednesday night, and he was like, have you waited like 9 months
really
for that?
Good. I think Pato did say the other day that he's like, it's the worst of any of the top 5 European leagues.
But that's just most things that you're talking about with Pat, isn't it? Something's always the worst.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do one final personal question then from Alan Hayden, who says, favourite type of curry?
Chris, you're a bit of a connoisseur.
I went back to Leicester last week, went to Dine India in Countersthorpe, which is a hot spot, I'll have you know. And had a few bevs before, so I was feeling a bit waved when we walked in. There's about 13 of us. I asked the gentleman on the way in, what is the best curry in this establishment? He said, my brother owns it. He said, my brother recommends the lamb jaipur. We got 13 of them. And they were absolutely sensational.
Really?
So next time you go for a curry, the lamb jaipur.
What heat is that?
A little kick to it. If we're sticking chilies against it, maybe 1 or 2 out of 4. So it's got a tiny kick.
Dougie used to call my guy.
Oh no, masala bad. But masala when I'm trying to be cool, but normally cool.
But Unreal, are you a bit?
I can't handle spice. I'm pathetic.
a coconut curry is a good curry. Don't let people beat you down with it, mate.
Do you
Get a
guys
little
ever
bit of a
have-
keema naan in
It's
there.
not an Indian, but do you ever have beef massaman? It's I always have that for Thai. It's very good.
Thai curry.
You're more of a Thai guy.
I do like Thai. Yeah.
Okay.
I usually just go for a lamb rogan Josh, to be fair.
Solid.
Yeah. Nice,
It's not a bit heat,
nice,
isn't it?
nice and simple one. No, it's not that hot. It's usually probably
Know
about
what you like and you
one
like
or
what you
two
know, yeah.
curries, 1 or 2 chilies on the curry scale. Yeah, nothing too adventurous.
What'd you get for sides?
Always get a garlic naan,
Likewise.
Not a garlic and cheese.
4 poppadoms,
Just garlic.
chutney, pilau rice, 2 onion bhaji.
Do you ever get sagaloo?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't mind
Sagaloo,
sagaloo,
Bombay
yeah.
aloo.
Yeah.
Do you struggle to, like, if there's poppadoms on the table, I'm eating them.
Yeah.
Like, contain yourself around the poppadoms and pickles because
Like
they're
prawn crackers, you
unreal.
can't really-
I've
They're
started
unreal.
to stop buying rice though recently with my curries. When I get a takeaway curry, I no longer buy rice. I just have the curry, poppadoms, naans.
Yeah. Too much real estate in your
It's
stomach.
just I
mind
just
it.
think it just it's a waste of food
Yeah.
space.
I could fit an onion bhaji in there. The rice, mate.
100%. All right, that's it for another episode of Sunday Vibes. Then enough curry talk. What do you want to plug?
What's happening on your football daily, Dukes?
On Friday's Continental Club, we were in the Untitled Tavern again. We were talking about Barcelona and Real Madrid, who will win La Liga next year. It looks like Real Madrid are going to wrap it up. They're 10 points ahead with 10 games to go. It's El Clasico on Sunday in a couple of hours, actually, so get excited for that. So, yeah, go check that out.
Yeah, I presume you all said Real Madrid.
We did, although Mikey McCubbin, behind the camera today, says, Barcelona have a chance to close the gap, he thinks.
Yeah, I mean, expected points is very close. I think I was looking at the expected points under stat table today. I think they're both about
Since
50,
Xavi came in,
I think
their
both
points,
about 55 points.
yeah, if they'd done their points per game under Xavi for the entire season, they'd be 1 point behind.
Yeah.
But Real Madrid are going to get Mbappe, so.
Yeah, truth. And maybe Haaland. Christopher.
Hopefully not.
What else is a plug? You'd have thought I'd use that opportunity to think of something.
was hoping you
I
were.
didn't. Keep your eyes peeled for another episode of Team Talk, which
Yes.
is coming out yesterday. No,
No, next week, isn't it?
next Saturday.
Yeah.
So just brace yourself for it. All right, international weekend, bang.
There we go. Thanks very much for everybody. Thanks very much for watching, everybody. There we go.
Terrible outro. Bye.